Okay, so if you go on the student portal, the notes, we're going to finish up the last two slides from last week, Surat al-Masad and, no, Surat al-Falaq, قل أعوذ برب الناس وأعوذ بالفلق and قل هو الله أحد. We're going to finish the last two slides, and then we're going to connect everything, review it, answer questions if you have any, and then we'll start. We're doing two surahs today, and the notes are also up there already. Surat al-Masad, Tabbat Yada Abi Lahab al-Mutab, and then Surat al-Nasr, إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح. So what I'm going to do is to start us off with Quran.
The giving of udhiyah or qurbani is an Islamic tradition and obligation. When your qurbani donations reach
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس.
Does anybody have questions before we start? If you do, just go ahead and type them up in the chat box, and I'll take a, you know how I take a break every once in a while and I come back and check if there's any questions and I go ahead and answer them. But we'll go ahead and start just so that we can end on time today and I don't keep anybody more than our regular time, inshallah. I will share my screen. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in knowledge that is beneficial. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teach us that which we need and guide us to practice and implement the knowledge that He is teaching us. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Knowledge that isn't implemented isn't beneficial. So whenever we say, may Allah make it beneficial, then we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us and give us the tawfiq, guide us and give us the success in implementing in what it is that we are learning. So if we go ahead and start last week, I'm not seeing where we can take the quizzes. Okay, so what I'll do for the dosa, assalamu alaikum. What I will do, maybe during a break, I will go and I will show it to you. It's where you see the video, then there is the PDF notes, then there is the quizzes. I didn't upload it for these 3 surahs because we didn't finish them. I don't know if you guys got that email, but I will show you inshallah for the rest of them. Okay. All right, so we, just to summarize the 2 surahs that we have been working on, we said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us, like those two du'as, al-mu'awwidhatayn, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas and Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, are both two surahs where we're asking Allah, we're making dua for protection. They're called al-mu'awwidhatayn. Isti'adha is the type of like you're seeking refuge in Allah, like somebody is running to Allah and basically they're saying like, I have no one to help me and support me and protect me from this harm other than you, right? So we're doing isti'adha, we're seeking that protection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts both surahs with Surah Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas. He starts it with his names and attributes that we talked about. How does it relate? How does it relate to, like, how do we understand them and interact with them? And then in Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts with the time of day, which is like the break of dawn, the early morning. And then what are we asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from? We're asking Allah to protect us from, how do I hide everything from here? Just go right here. Okay. We're asking Allah to protect us from the evil whispers, from the shayateen, and from the humans. And I wanted to go a little bit and go back to that again and review it. We're asking Allah to protect us from the evil of the creation, because we said that every creation of Allah has the potential to harm us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can ultimately protect us, or something can harm us and we could, like we could get harmed by something. We could get hit by a car. We could get be harmed, or injustice can come to us by somebody else. That this is all like in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we continuously ask Allah to protect us. And then we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the evil of the night, when the night spreads, because this is the time where the shayateen come out. They come out with force. They have more energy to commit evil, and we know that the nighttime is one of the times that corruption happens, or crimes happen and they increase. So we have the sunnah of like being home and sleeping right after Isha, and not being out unless it's like absolutely necessary. Then we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the evil of the magicians, those who blow in the knots, and the evil of the ones who do envy when they do envy. So those are number 4 and number 5 are the ones that we're going to do today. So if I go to those slides, it's actually number 5 and it's number 4 and number 5. Yep. Okay. So what is sihr? What is considered sihr? Sihr is basically when something appears to be true, but it's not true. Something appears to be true, but it's not true. How does it happen? How can it happen? Usually sihr, not usually, sihr always involves the support and the help of a jinn. A human being by themselves cannot commit sihr. They cannot do magic. And when I speak about magic here, I'm not talking about tricks. I'm not talking about, those lighthearted tricks where you do something and you hide it with your hands and you do this, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm talking about people who are able to do things like, just like Musa alayhi salam, when he was confronting the magicians, they were able to take sticks and make it appear like it was a snake. Where Musa alayhi salam, when Allah gave him the miracle, the snake became an actual snake, right? So you have these shows that come on TV where you see somebody putting themselves in a box, cutting the box, and then there's 2 sides. Where are they? You see their head here, you see their legs here, and the box is completely separated. What do they do to your eyes? That's the help of a jinn. There was a story Sheikh Wali told us about a Muslim man who was in a Muslim country, right? And sihr can be done by anybody. It can be done by a Muslim, a Christian, a Jewish, somebody who has no faith, somebody who has anybody could do it, Basically, people from all backgrounds do it, people from all cultures and communities do it. But then what it requires is that you denounce your faith. You have to denounce your connection with God. You have to show the jinn that you are denouncing and disrespecting God, and that's how you get into this agreement with the jinn that they will do they like, you disrespect Allah, you worship them, you like elevate them, you give them a status, like you basically kind of treat them in a way where you listen to them, you obey them. They kind of find enjoyment in that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. And in return, they will do for you acts, physical acts, that for them is not impossible. For them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He tells us He created the jinn to have the ability to carry this whole building and disappear with it and take it to a different part of the world in matter of seconds. This is just the nature in Allah, how Allah created them. Some of them can go under the water, some of them can walk on the water, so some of them are flying, some of them are very, very strong, right? So when a person appears to be doing these supernatural things, it's because another being where this is natural for them is actually doing it, right? So there's no supernaturality in it, but the reason why Islam looks at it as if you do sihr, it's kufr, it's considered like you disbelieve in God. The reason why we look at it like that is because you had to have denounced Allah and the faith for you to get into that agreement, right? So going back to the story, is there he saw a magician in a Muslim country, not Sheikh Walid, his Sheikh saw it. And he said to him, like, you know, this is not okay. You know, this is not, it's haram. Why are you doing it? He said, I'm not going to quit until I can get my revenge from a specific person. And then he said to him, like, who is this person that you want to get revenge from? And so the magician is saying that one day he was in a fancy hotel in Dubai, you know, the UAE, and he's performing magical tricks, and he has audience that are watching and paid all this money to watch him. And he said he was in the middle of this like trick where he had knives inside of him. And then a young man who looks like he had, you know, appeared like to have the sunnah on him came in the hall, and he's just passing by. But he looks at the guy, he looks at the magician, and their eyes like meet and they connect, and they don't stop looking at one another. And so the young man who came in, who's just passing by, I guess he knew like this is a place where magic is happening. This is a place where the evil jinn are at. So he started reading Ayatul Kursi. He kept on reading it and reading it and reading it to protect himself. And then he left. So the magician who's performing these tricks, automatically fell to the ground and was in a coma for a few months. And because of it, he lost his deals, he lost his reputation, he lost his home. Obviously, he makes money out of this, right? So when he became better and he was well, he called the jinn because they had an agreement. And the agreement is, you help me, I help you, I support you, you know? So the jinn, they broke the promise, they broke the contract, and they broke it in a very difficult time where this guy ended up having to pay the consequences of what he was in. So they said to him, the power of that guy who read the Quran made us leave not just Dubai, we left the whole country, you know, like it was so powerful. So this magician made his mind up that he is going to get his revenge from this man. And he said to his sheikh, I have not been like, you know, I'm not going to stop doing magic until I can revenge from that guy. And he said, I've been after him for like over a year and I haven't been able to get him because this guy is like, he is very conscious over his salah. He doesn't miss his salah. He doesn't miss his adhkar. He doesn't, like, I have no way to get to him, you know? And we learned that the Prophet ﷺ tells us that that Yahya ibn Zakaria, the Prophet of Allah, he used to tell his people, oh my people, protect yourself with your dhikr, protect yourself with your remembrance in the morning, and you're like asking Allah to protect you. Protect yourself with that, because the example of the person who does that is like the one who is running, like an enemy is chasing him, and they're running and running and running and running, and then they come to a fortress, they open the gate, they get inside, they lock the gate, and they close it. And so now between them and the enemy is this fortress. And so no harm can get to them. So that's the power of making dua and asking Allah to protect you and doing your adhkar. Can somebody be harmed even after they have done that? Yes, and that's when we say this is the qadr of Allah. This is something that had been written for you. This is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed to happen. And there's always wisdom for why things happen to you. And so this is when you connect yourself to Allah, you make dua, and you go back to you increase in what you're able, like what you increase your treatment, basically. And your treatment is your dhikr, and obviously anything that comes with the sihr, right? So I think I've covered everything on here. Let's say, for example, what I mean by anything that comes with the sihr. I remember a sister once reached out, and her husband, she said that sihr had been done against him, and he's constantly like complaining of stomach pain. I remember talking to Sheikh Aisha was about it, like what they were seeking spiritual healing, which is good. You do need to get spiritual healing. You need to get support of the scholars, of the people who have the knowledge of spiritual healing with the Quran. But I remember Sheikh Aisha was also emphasizing, you have stomach pain, you need to go see a doctor. You know, so this is now something physical. If because of this sihr that was done to you, you broke a leg, or you broke an arm, or you have a stomach pain, or you're getting migraine headaches, or you developed diabetes, or something harmful happened to you, then go get it treated, right? We don't just rely on the spiritual healing, because now you're also a physical, like you're a human being with a physical body, and your physical body needs to be taken care of, just like the spiritual stuff needs to also be taken care of. And so, yeah, so some of the cultural myths we have, should I go to a raqi or a doctor? I think I've explained that in the answer. And then striking the balance between believing in the unseen world and taking measures to protect oneself. So what does that mean? Basically, we know this stuff happens, right? But then our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always 10 times more powerful. Our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always 10 times more powerful. I'm not going to alter my life out of fear of these things happening to me. I'm going to live a life of dua and dhikr and seeking the protection of Allah, a life of gratitude, and believing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has my back. Because what happens is that there are some cultures and some communities where we, and I think it's not just specific cultures and communities, when there is a lack of understanding for Islamic knowledge, we attribute what we don't. This is human nature. Whatever we don't know, we fear it, we attribute so much power to it, right? But the one who studies, the one who learns, will know, like, no, I'm not going to be harmed, you know? And I remember in one class where we talked about the jinn and sihr and magic with Sheikh Walid Basuni, he kept on saying, like, you know, don't, like, we get scared whenever the jinn are talked about. And he's like, no, they are scared of you. You know, they are the ones who are scared of you. Why are they scared of you? Because you have La ilaha illallah, you have your iman, and you have the power of your dua, you have the power of your dhikr. And so don't like get rid of this emotion thing that you have, you know, because that makes you vulnerable. You know, you that means like you believe in something so much that it can actually harm you. But if your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your certainty in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more, then nothing can harm you, right? And then I would remind us to go back to this hadith that is on like the previous line. When Ibn Abbas, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at the young age of 7, he's teaching him, this is how you protect yourself. Know that nothing can harm you with being mindful of Allah, and know that nothing can benefit you regardless of who wants to help you, right? So it all goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's about the sihr and the magic. The second one is hasad. وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدٍ. What is hasad? Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says that hasad is basically negative energy that comes from the eyes of the person who's doing the hasad. They look at something and then they wish that the blessing was taken away. So hasad, this literally is like, I see a blessing on you, something that Allah has given you, something that is beautiful, something that is amazing, something that my heart wants. And then more than wanting it, what the element that is there that makes it evil, that is the fact that I am wishing that you didn't have it. I am hating the idea that you actually have that. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ tells us that hasad eats away the good deeds like the fire eats away the wood, right? So if somebody is praying and establishing their salah and they're fasting and they're paying sadaqah and they're doing all these great deeds and they're reading Quran, but then in their heart they have this disease of hasad, where they look at somebody and they see a blessing on that person and they wish that that person didn't have it, or they hate the fact that that person is enjoying something, and they are losing their good deeds, right? And they're that emotion that is stemming, it's like a disease of the heart. It's like a total disease of the heart. And it stems from the idea of the fact that you're not recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the one who gave the blessing. You're recognizing this person to have had, like to just have it, and you don't want them to enjoy it, or you feel like, why do they have it? Why couldn't that be me, right? Why couldn't I have it? So there is a level of hasad that is allowed, where the Prophet ﷺ tells us that hasad illa fitnatain. There's no hasad except in two places. That a person has been blessed with something as good as, like, they have the Quran, they know the Quran, and so they teach it, they act upon it, they are spreading it, they're reciting it all the time, and so you love that goodness, and so you want it for yourself. But with that, you're not wishing that they didn't have it, you just want it for yourself. The other type is you see a person who is very wealthy, so wealthy that they are doing great things with their money, and then you look at it and you say, subhanAllah, I wish I had that too, right? Because you also want to do the goodness. So this is the type of feeling or emotion where you are inspired to do good. There was an article I read 2 days ago about these two millionaires. I think it's the founders of Home Depot, if I'm not mistaken, the husband and the wife, who donated $450 million to New York University. New York University's, what do you call, medical school. And so now all the students can go to the medical school and graduate with zero debt. Like, wow, mashallah, tabarakallah, right? And you look at that and you're like, I wish I was that wealthy. What would I do with the money Allah gives me? Seeing, like, and if you are a person of khayr, if your heart has goodness, then you're going to want to do good with the money. If you are not somebody who's spending the $5 you have in khayr right now, then if Allah gives you millions, you're not going to spend your money in khayr. Does that make sense? If you are somebody you look at somebody who's hafiz al-Quran and you love what they are doing and you wish you could do it, but then right now there's zero of your time going to Quran, you're not how are you going to get there? So it kind of also eliminates this wishful thinking, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows who's being truthful in their desire, right? But then the idea that we look at people, we look at those who are around us, and we are inspired by them, and we love what they are doing. And so we ask Allah, we say, MashaAllah, Tabarakallah, meaning, MashaAllah, Barakallah, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed this. Barakallah means, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase in this khair for you. You make that dua for the person. And I remember one of my teachers saying that when we say that, we're essentially also asking Allah, Allah is also going to give us like similarly, right? Just praising and appreciating and asking Allah to bless it for them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives it to you as well. So that's where it's coming from. Now, hasad is a natural human emotion as well. We all have it, like even little kids show it. And so what do we do is that we acknowledge it, become aware of it, acknowledge that I'm feeling this way, understand why are you feeling this way. So I remember a friend who once said to me, and this is before she got married, she said somebody got married that she was friends with, and she said, I have never felt that way in my life. Like I remember feeling like I wish it was me. And you just sit with that emotion and say like, okay, well, I guess if I'm feeling this way, mashallah, tabarakallah for her, but ya Allah, like I really want to be married as well. Ya Allah, this is a stage in my life that I want. Or you see a child in somebody and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delayed it from you, and you love it for them, but you also recognize that you want it. And this is okay. This is a human emotion, right? What we do with the jealousy is what matters. And what we do to teach our kids to deal with it from a young age is the important thing, because like in Surah Yusuf, Yaqub alayhi salam is very conscious of it. And so he's always teaching, like he's telling his son, don't share this certain stuff with your siblings, because they are already coming from a place where they envy you, right? Where they're jealous of you. And it's not a good type of jealousy, because we see that at the end it leads them to harm their brother. So you know that was not a good feeling. Same thing with when the two sons of Adam alayhi salam, Habil and Qabil, where one of them killed his brother because he was so jealous, to the point where he felt like, you got the better wife, you got the better looking wife, sister, and then now Allah accepted what you did, and Allah did not accept from me, and so because I'm so angry at you, I'm going to kill you. And so what do we do as people who also care for others when we can nurture that emotion, acknowledge it, tell them like, oh, you're feeling this way because you want this one as well, and then show them how Allah, connect them to Allah, like this is from Allah and Allah can give it to you. If you really want it, make dua to Allah, right? Or you can shed light on the blessings Allah gave them, because when we feel this way, it's usually because we're not mindful of what Allah has already given us, and we're consumed with what this other person has, right? There is a podcast I highly recommend if you want to listen to, like the science of jealousy and how it happens and how it's actually impacting our society today. Like there's all these studies about people who are going for therapy because of Facebook, because of platforms like Facebook, because they are constantly looking at other people's lives and they're wanting it for themselves. So it's called Hidden Brain. It's by NPR. And this specific episode is called Wishing for Other People's Blessings. Wishing for counting other people's blessings. Because, the idea of count your blessings, counting other people's blessings and not counting your own blessings. So we said ruling of it is haram. So what is ayn? Ayn is when the hasad becomes so extreme, like this emotion was there for you. You never controlled it, you never managed it, and now it became so powerful that it actually harms other people. Okay, that's what Ibn al-Qayyim meant. I think I explained what Ibn al-Qayyim said in the wrong place. What Ibn al-Qayyim meant to explain in saying that it's a spiritual energy that comes from the eyes of the person doing hasad, that's the ayn, okay? And what it does is that you recognize that you have this ability where your hasad became so aggressive. You let it go without checking it, without controlling it, without making dua for it to go down, for you to work against that natural thing that is in you. You let it go so far that now when you look at somebody and you look at their blessings and you wish it was taken, that energy is so powerful it can actually harm the other person. The Prophet ﷺ tells us, and I want to go back to my notes here, that ayn actually has the power to kill people, right? That the majority of what people die for or get harmed for is ayn, right? Because people don't recognize they have this. It's a disease of the heart, and so many of us have it. Like you only you know yourself. Only you are aware of what the emotions and the feelings in your heart, right? So you let it go, and then now it's like you're spreading all this harm towards people, which is also haram. But then how do you get rid of it? So there was a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, a group of them that were together. One of them took off his shirt, and I guess his skin looked beautiful. His body looked beautiful. Another companion said, "Wow, look at this, this is so amazing." And then that man was fell down in a coma right away. And so the Prophet ﷺ said that the other guy had to make wudu and bring that water and wash this person and like the other person make wudu with that water. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, "Alama yaqtulu ahadukum akhah." Why would one of you kill his brother? If you see something that you like, then ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for barakah. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase it. Don't look at something, because you're asking Allah for barakah means you're asking Allah to increase it. The opposite of that, and this is what a person who does hasad or gives ayn is capable of emanating, like the energy that they emanate from their heart, is wishing that the person didn't even have it, that it was completely gone, you know? So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like make us see that we are blessed beyond we can imagine. And how do you get rid of it? The first thing is to acknowledge it. The second thing is to like sit with it. I would say, like, for me, what works is journaling about things and taking action. Like, so for example, a friend of mine was once like marriage got really delayed for her, and she kept on saying, she said to me one day, I left social media because I realized, as happy as I was for my friends who kept on getting married, I couldn't handle that feeling. Like, it didn't put me in a good place. And I remember feeling like, mashallah, tabarakallah, that's somebody who recognized that something was so negative for them. The way they were feeling, they recognized what they were feeling and how they were perceiving things wasn't what was right. And so they took the measures to cut it off until they could work on it and then bring themselves back to this world, right? And then this is the question of like, how do you balance, like, knowing that this stuff exists? How do you make sure should you never share your blessings? Should you never talk about the good things that are happening for you? Now, here for a Muslim, there is a balance. The Prophet ﷺ does tell us that when you're getting things done in your life, like important things, do it with silence. And then once you got it, then go ahead and share. You don't know, like that's one way to protect yourself, obviously after making your adhkar and your du'as and everything. Another thing is that we don't really take into consideration is the over-flaunting of our blessings, and having the fear of never ever wanting to share anything or show anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with. So that's a spectrum. Where is the balance? You know it for yourself. What we do need to be careful of is living a life where, I remember I was speaking to a relative and I said, like, what if, like, Allah blessed you with them, because he had a car displayed somewhere, like, oh, I want this car one day. And you have to have a lot of money to get that car, apparently, right? And so I said, like, mashallah, like, Allah could have given it to you. And then he said, Kaltua, like, sometimes I feel like if I ever had that money, I wouldn't get that kind of a car because I'm scared of what if the evil eye happens? And I'm like, why are we going to stop ourselves from the blessings of Allah because we're scared of the evil eye? And similarly, like another family member once said, she had, this young girl had long hair, beautiful hair, and she would say things like, her mother never lets her go to a hair salon because she tells her, not because it's haram, not because it's halal, not because, it's not healthy or you don't want to do this. Like, there isn't any logic to it other than people are going to give you the evil eye, so we're never going to do this. And so to me, this seems an extreme level of protecting oneself, because we make dua, we ask Allah to protect us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. If Allah has blessed you with something, you speak and you connect it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You inspire others towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't say, look at me, I got this hottest phone ever. My phone is not hot at all. But you know what I mean? Like, you don't say that. You say, like, alhamdulillah, Allah allowed me to have this. Like, it's, I wanted it, I saved for it, Allah made it possible, I got a good deal on it, like, alhamdulillah. Connecting it always back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yeah, those are the couple of things that are coming up for me. And obviously, like, reciting. So what was the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when it comes to protecting ourselves? He read Surat AlFalaq, Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, and Qul huwallahu ahad every single morning and every single evening. There are narrations where he encouraged somebody, and I think it's in the next one, that he advised one of his companions to read it after every salah. Just like we read Ayatul Kursi after every salah, we read those 3 after every salah as well. That's just an extra level of protection. But bare minimum is to read it for the morning and the evening adhkar, which inshallah, I'm going to start making our videos for them and putting them in the portal this week. And then doing it after every salah, and then doing it definitely before you sleep as well. Make dua for barakah. If you see something you like on someone else, ask Allah to give it to you as well. If your heart really wants it, count your blessing. Like if Allah didn't give you maybe that, if you lived your whole life not having that blessing that somebody else had received, and you wanted it too, then asking Allah for contentment, because contentment is like what we're missing, you know. Not just because, I mean, Allah answers all du'as, right? But it's also possible that your dua might be extremely delayed, or that it might be answered in the akhirah, right? So knowing that I'm going to be content, I'm going to teach my heart and myself how to be content, right? And then purify the heart from the disease like jealousy, hatred, and envy. Increase your remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we were to connect all 3 surahs, one calls us to ikhlas, complete surrendering to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second one calls us to get Surat AlFalaq. Let's make this one the second one. That's how it is in the Quran. Surat AlFalaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're asking him to protect us from all this evil that can come to us from the external world, that can attack us from the external world. And then Surah Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas, we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the things that come from within us, the whispers of shaitan, of our own self, the negative self, the one that does not want good for you. And then the impact of the people that are inspiring you to do evil. That we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from all of that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us. May Allah protect us from it. I attended a mindfulness workshop last week after class, and there was the conversation. It was by Muslims, but just because we had done Surah Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas that day, we were talking about where are the thoughts coming from, the thoughts that we have. And it's interesting because for me, like, I connected back to what Allah is telling us, and knowing that those thoughts that are not good for us, they come from our evil nafs, or it comes from evil people around us who put those thoughts in our hearts, or it came from shaitan himself, you know, because he does not want good for you, right? And when you think about whispers, min sharri al-waswas al-khannas, waswas is like, waswas, what was the definition of waswas? Waswas is like whisper, like something that is whispering at you. How is it evil? It could be just derailing you from the path. It could just be like you feeling, the whisper is telling you you're not good enough, you know? So it's not like necessarily inspiring you to do something evil, but it's making you doubt your own self. It's making you doubt your own abilities. It's making you doubt the people that are around you. Like, so instead of thinking good of this person, you think evil of them. So, like, where is it coming from? Always going back to that. Is it coming from a place of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rationale? Like, it's coming from like rationale that is connected to sound knowledge? Or is it coming from a place that I can't even pinpoint? It's coming from a place of fear from me. It's coming from a place of like a disease of the heart from me. So always thinking of that. So those are du'as themselves. So I don't have a du'a listed in these surahs. What resonated with you? Let me go back to you guys. Okay. Okay, so Sister Johanna said, your example making the subject of magic seem distant. Yes, I feel like, wallahu ta'ala alam, in my own personal life, it does seem distant. So thank you for pointing that out. Tricks are not going to enter our lives often. You're right. So what kind of things? When people go and seek out a magician to harm a family member, or to, okay, so families seek out people who use magic to harm others, make people sick, make someone love you, harm your child. Is it real? It is real and not obvious, like your example. Okay, so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thank you for bringing that up. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about magic in the Quran, He does say, يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ their intention is to separate between a husband and wife, right? The reason why it's distant from me, because I didn't really connect with it, but Allah is specific about it, that one of the biggest ways or reasons why magic is used in the world is because somebody specifically wants to harm you. And I think we mentioned this with the Prophet ﷺ last week, where somebody specifically wanted to harm him, so they took his hair, put it in a comb, and put it under the ground, under the well, so there was obviously, when this person is doing this to you, they're not going to come and try to do harm to you because you're just passing by. There is the intention of harm. Have I ever seen it happen to people? Maybe that's why I didn't emphasize those stories. But then knowing that it happens because there is harm that is intended. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. What also does shock me, that I do want to share, is that it does happen in our own communities. Like, I remember my friend telling me, in Cedar, there is a few magicians that live in those tall buildings where people go and a woman will say, I want so-and-so to fall in love with me, or I want so-and-so to leave his wife. And there's all these miserable stories that we could share. I guess my heart doesn't, I don't like to dwell in them because they are real. I'm not going to say they're not real. I guess I'm just going to say Jazakallah khair for bringing it up. It's still to not give them more power than they deserve, or not to give them the explanation for why everything is happening to us. So this is what I meant by when as a community, or as a community, when a person lacks knowledge of Islamic knowledge, they're going to attribute even minor illnesses that they have to sihr and jinn, right? So you have an epidemic of people saying, I'm possessed, or falling, they fall, they faint, and then they attribute it to the jinn. And it's not just one or two or three people. This stuff happens in very few numbers. It's not as massive as 50% of this community has it. That's the reason why I don't like to dwell on the how it happens, making us connect to the fact that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that can protect us, right? And that we need to seek out the ways to protect ourselves. And this, I honestly believe, is stemming from, and it's not just me, this is what I learned from my teachers as well, is that communities, or certain communities, have they attribute way too much to this stuff than the reality actually is. And Sheikh Yasir Qadi, I think, even gave a statistic one time that, I can't remember the statistic, but I think he said something a lot, it was a huge percentage that sometimes it's just a psychological problem, it's just a physical problem that you have that you need to go treat. Somebody will be afflicted with bipolar disorder, and then they're thinking this is only jinn, and there's no seeking of treatment, there's no seeking of therapy. And then where does it lead us as a community? So having the Islamic knowledge about this stuff, you also recognize that there's a responsibility on you to protect yourself and seek treatment when it's out there. Absolutely. So Sister Johanna said, since those are actually here, we the students need to know that it is real and we protect ourselves. Absolutely. Jazakillah khair. So Ferdowsa, since you asked for, I'm not in it. I'm going to log in. I'm going to show you where the quizzes are. If you have any thoughts, questions, or things that are resonating with you, please go ahead and type them in. This is beneficial, what Sister Johanna has brought up. where is it? Okay, so if you are in your, what do you call, like your student area, there's those 3 sections. So if you go under, let's say, I'll go to Surat Al-Fatiha, it has the video, it has the notes, and it has a test. So when you click on the test, I hope you saw it, there is the test. That's where you find the quiz, okay? For Surat Qul A'udhu Birabbil Falaq, I sent you guys an email saying that I didn't update it yet because we didn't finish the surah. Where is it? Here's Qul A'udhu Birabbil Falaq. What we did last week is up here. The continuation today, once we're done, I'm gonna put it up here. Well, it's gonna be the rest of the Surat Al-Masad and Surat Qul A'udhu Birabbil إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح. But then your actual quiz will be here, will be in this area. So I hope that answers your question. You know, something else that is in our community that, you know, what Sister Johanna just mentioned comes up for me. And I'm going to present both opinions because it's not just, so there's places we call like ruqya homes, you know, like they call it shifa centers, you know, healing centers, where you go and you sit as a group, and then the shuyukh are going around and they're making, they're reading Quran and they're watching how people react. And, you know, like I've been to one of those once, so I know exactly, like I know it in my head. Like you walk in, there's different rooms, they have people sitting, and then the Quran is playing through microphones and is in all the rooms, and the shuyukh are going around and they're walking around and they're reciting and they're looking at like those places are usually, like the majority of the people that go are women, and some of them are reacting like, you could tell like there is something serious happening for them, or like there is a serious possession, where somebody else is like crying and they're in tears and they're maybe touched by the Quran. Some other people, nothing is happening to them. So there's just so many different people, so many different reactions. What I like from speaking with one imam, there's 2 opinions, that those places are perfectly fine and they do exist and you go there for treatment. And in our community, people do believe like it's okay to go there, and they do go there. Other scholars say that those places are not proper, and in some countries, I know in Saudi, they end up shutting them off, closing them off whenever they open, because ruqya is supposed to be one-on-one. It's supposed to be done as like one person to the other person, whereby somebody who knows how to do it, but then they're assessing you, they're reading Quran on you, you know, not like as a group, because what could happen sometimes is that even like, you know, when you're doing ruqya, there's the emphasis of you have to have your wudu, don't be around that area, because if you're somebody who hasn't like the jinn, or if you're possessed, or if they're like they could leave you and then go to this other person, you know. So you have to take extra measures in making sure that people are protected, and in environments where it's a group ruqya, that extra protection is gone, you know. So the sunnah was, the way the Prophet ﷺ did it, is that he did it on himself, and that he asked people to do it on, like he would do it for others as well, but then the best way to do it is to do it on yourself. And if there is absolute need, you go to Iraqi. It was Sheikh Mughamsi that said one time, no one cares about your wellness and your well-being more than your own self and your own parents who love you, or the people that are trying to heal you, like your family members. So making sure that you go to them first, because this is the Quran, these are the words of Allah that we're using. Another thing is to be mindful of things that are being used, as like knowing that this person is actually using Quran and Sunnah, and not using things that are, they claim it's the Quran and the Sunnah, but then it ends up being not really Quran and Sunnah. So one time in one of our Aqidah classes, Sheikh Yasir Qadi, when he taught this section, one of the students volunteered You know how the people have some like communities, we have some Somalis, I think we call it hirsi. In Indo-Pakistani culture, they call it ta'wiza. It's like you have it on your neck, you wear it from the time you're young or on a bracelet. And the ta'wiza means like isti'ada, like a protector, right? So this guy, and you don't know what's inside of it, but you're told that it is a protection. You're told that it is a protection from all harm. So this guy volunteered to take it off and open it and let the sheikh see what was in it. So the sheikh opens it and he puts it up. He did it in another state, but I guess he had to dispel it first before. He put it on a like overhead projector for us to see it. And then it said things like gibberish language was written in this paper. It said something like Bismi, and then in the name of, and instead of one of the names of Allah, it was in the name of a jinn that you ask to protect you. You know, and so in the name of this jinn, and then everything else is like gibberish, and then there are numbers, and there's like little maps or little grids and that's how you know this is not the work of Allah, this is not Quran, this is not Sunnah. Even though a lot of our communities, Muslim communities, because of lack of knowledge of Islam and Aqidah, we are susceptible to these kind of things. And alhamdulillah, there has been a lot of education in a lot of our communities, and these things are becoming less like prominent, but then they do still happen. It's not like they don't happen anymore. There are people that have still practiced this stuff, and they didn't stop it. So being mindful of that, being mindful of not protecting ourselves with anything other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, like permitted in the Quran, what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught us in the Sunnah. Where am I? Okay, should we continue? I see no questions coming up, which is pretty good and interesting. I think it's not really good. Interesting, because in the actual class, questions don't stop when it comes to this section. Okay. All right, so if you go to the next section is Surat AlMasad and Surat AlNasr. And I put up the notes for us. If you don't have it, you could go ahead and take it out. All right, let's go ahead and listen to them.
Surat Nasr. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح. ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا. ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا. فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره. واستغفره إنه كان توابا. سورة المسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب. تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب. وتب ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب سيصلى نارا ذات لهب وامرأته حمالة الحطب في جيدها حبل من مسد
Okay, so Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Salatu Wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Hopefully, inshallah, we'll finish these two surahs bi'idhnillah, within the hour, I hope. I really thought it would be shorter to finish up those two slides, but they took a lot longer. So Surat Tabbat Yada Abi Lahabin wa Tab and Surat Nasr, one of the earliest surahs we learn as kids. So we're starting with Surat Tabbat Yada Abi Lahabin wa Tab. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, like Tabbat Yada Abi Lahabin wa Tab basically means condemned are the hands of Abi Lahab and he is condemned. So it's we're gonna come to the explanation, but condemned Tabbat is like a curse. It's like may he be cursed, may he be cut off, may he be like maybe he destroyed. ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب. His wealth did not avail him, nor did what he acquired of it. سيصلى نارا ذات لهب. He will definitely be roasted or burned in a flaming fire. وامرأته حمالة الحطب. And his wife, the firewood carrier. في جيدها حبل من مسد. Around her neck will be a rope made of thorns. So why is this happening to them? Let's go back to the surah facts. What is details that we need to know about the surah? Surat AlMasad is a Mekki surah. It was revealed in the early stages of the Meccan era when the Prophet ﷺ was commanded to make the da'wah or the delivery of the message of Islam public. He went up to that mount and he called and he gathered the people. Abu Lahab was one of the people that came, one of the earliest ones that came. And when the Prophet ﷺ said to the people, such and such family, oh such and such family, oh such and such family, if I were to tell you that there was an army that was about to invade us, would you believe me? And they all said, yes, we would believe you, because they knew he was an honest and truthful man who was trustworthy. And then he said to them that I'm telling you that I am the messenger of Allah. I am warning you of a great punishment that will come your way. And he called them to the message of the Quran, protect yourself, believe in Allah alone, worship him alone, and you'll be protected from this punishment. And then the first person who spoke was Abu Lahab, and he said, Tabban lak alihada jama'tana. May you be perished, may you be destroyed. Is this why you are calling us? Is this why you have gathered us? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right away responds by in the Quran by saying Tabbat yada Abi Lahab tab. He's the one that is going to be destroyed. And we'll go into the explanation. So this surah explains the objectives of it. The message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is delivering to us is the command, who Abu Lahab is and who his wife is, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes care of the enemy, and how when the enemy is actually from within, it's from your own family, or it's from your own community, or people closest to you, people that are supposed to be supporting you. And then dealing with toxic family members, or dealing with toxic people in general. To important missions in life, and that are not how it's not going to be free of difficulty or serious difficulty. Just like the Prophet ﷺ is getting harmed not just by the Quraysh, but also by his own family member here. So in explanation of the surah, let me go to my slides up. What did I just do? I think I saved it under the wrong name. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, so I saved this one under the wrong name. Okay. So so the ayah when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab right here, tabbat means may it be destroyed. Yada is like just hands, but in the Arab language, I guess they would use his like the hands to describe yourself, like you yourself, your whole existence. And tabbat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is cursing him and making dua against him. Abi Lahab is himself. Watab literally means and it happened, and he is destroyed. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the beginning of the ayah is making the dua against him, and in the end of the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying it already happened. It like he's already destroyed, right? And one of the miracles that some of the scholars talk about is that this ayah was revealed, the surah was revealed in the beginning stages of the da'wah in Mecca, and Abu Lahab had every opportunity to accept Islam and prove the surah to be wrong because it's predicting something of the future. And had he accepted Islam, it would have been like, okay, well, this surah is not telling the truth, but he never accepted Islam. He actually died upon his animosity, his great animosity towards the Prophet ﷺ and Islam itself. ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب, because Abu Lahab used to go around and he used to say, I have a lot of children and I have a lot of money, all this punishment or all this pain or whatever that Muhammad is speaking about, my money and my children are going to protect me from it, right? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, nope, nothing will avail him, and we'll see how his own children are not able to save him or help him in this dunya when he needed them. So Abu Lahab, who is he to the Prophet ﷺ? He is the uncle. He is the paternal uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. The reason why Abu Lahab, he's called Abu Lahab in the Arab, he was a very handsome man, and Lahab in the way they used it at the time, or in that time, is to describe someone who's like hot. Like, when we say that person is like he's flaming hot, Lahab meaning as in like he's very handsome, he's very good looking. But then when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses it in the Quran, he connects it to the real fire that he is going to be experiencing in the hellfire, in Jahannam. He was the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was good to him. Like there's no narrations that he wasn't good to him before he started preaching Islam. That his animosity only started after the Prophet ﷺ started preached Islam, or he talked about the da'wah and he said that he was a prophet. That's when his animosity started. And I guess he didn't like it because he would say hada sabit. He is a man who left the way of his family, of his tradition, of his culture. This is like the biggest problem he had with him. Nothing else is mentioned about like jealousy or hatred, that jealousy that was mentioned maybe for Abu Jahl. It's not mentioned for Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab also, some of the narrations mention that he was the worst enemy the Prophet ﷺ had. This is why there's a whole surah dedicated to him. But then we know that Abu Jahl was the Fir'aun of this ummah. So how come he was worse than Abu Lahab himself? He was worse because he used to walk behind the Prophet ﷺ. He was his uncle. So imagine this man, like this hadith mentions how a young man would see Muhammad ﷺ walking and trying to deliver the message of Islam to people. And then another man is behind him and he's telling people, don't listen to him. He is my nephew. He is a sabit. He left the ways of his family. He left the tradition of his family. He is somebody who left the faith that we are upon. So imagine if you're walking down the street and somebody comes to you and tells you, hey, I have something really important to tell you. And then somebody else behind them is telling you, don't listen to them. This is my son, or this is my nephew. I know him. Something is wrong with him. It's going to take away from your ability to impact people. It's going to take away from how serious people could take you, because they're going to be like, what this person is saying is strange. I've never heard it before. And what their family member is telling me is confirming that this strangeness is not something I should even pay attention to or listen to. So that's who Abu Lahab was to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was his uncle, and that's why it made it even worse. Okay, when the, like, if you look at how did he compare to the other uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib, even though Abu Talib, he said, even though, like, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him the message of Islam, he said to him, I will protect you. My heart does not give me my heart will not allow me to leave the religion of my forefathers, but I will protect you. And he said to him, I will protect you, when Abu Lahab said, we will destroy you, we will get rid of you, we will harm you. And so Abu Talib said, no, we will protect him and we will honor him and we will give him our support. So even though I'm not going to follow him, I'm going to give him all my support. So there is the specific difficulty the Prophet ﷺ had when Abu Talib passed away, because Abu Talib was the leader of the family of the Prophet ﷺ. So whenever the rest of Quraysh wanted to come and harm the Prophet, or they would say, like, give him to us so that we could just kill him, Abu Talib would say, no, I'm not going to do that. When Abu Talib died, that leadership went to Abu Lahab. So this enemy was now the one to protect the Prophet ﷺ. And this is when the Prophet ﷺ now was like, okay, there's no stay for me in Mecca. And that's when he started to go and approach different cities, went to Ta'if, went to, when people would come for Hajj, he would go and he would ask them, will you take me in and will you protect me? And so knowing that how difficult that stage was, and knowing that Abu Lahab was the one who was in charge of protecting his nephew, and even though the custom says, their cultural customs, you protect your family member, whether you agree with them or not, Abu Lahab wasn't doing that. You know, he didn't care about protecting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Who is his wife? Jamil. She was an honorable woman. The Tafseer mentioned how she was the sister of Abu Sufyan. She was an honorable woman in Quraysh. She was well respected. She was a poet, but then she emphasized the Prophet, the punishment or the harming of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She stood with her husband and she supported him in everything he did against the Prophet. So Jamil would take and she would throw stuff in front of the Prophet ﷺ, thorns in front of the house of the Prophet ﷺ. She would cuss at him. She would curse at him. She would she would say very hurtful things to him. One time, the Quran was delayed from the Prophet ﷺ for a period of time, and then she said to him, I only see that your shaitan has left you. Like, you're possessed by a shaitan, and that shaitan has now left you. So another time when this surah was revealed, Jamil came to Abu Bakr and the Prophet ﷺ sitting together, and she said she had rocks in her hand, and she wanted to throw it at the face and stuff. She said, I want to stuff his mouth with it. But then when Abu Bakr, when she approached the Prophet and Abu Bakr said, how will you, why don't you do something to get away from this woman? And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, Allah will protect me from her. So Allah veiled the Prophet from her. She couldn't see him. So she's saying, where is Muhammad? Where is Muhammad? I'm going to do this to him. I'm going to do that to him. And then she started reciting this poetry and saying, Muhammadun abayna wa deenahu qalayna, mudhammamun abayna. She changed his name the blameworthy instead of the praiseworthy. The blameworthy, we reject him and his religion. We're not part of it. We don't want anything to do with it. And she's like saying, I'm going to hurt him physically. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like puts a ghishawa on her eyes where she cannot even see him. So why is there such a serious punishment for them in the Quran? Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promise to punish them in such a way? We talked about how Abu Lahab was, like Abu Lahab, another thing he did was when the Prophet ﷺ, before the message of Islam, he had two sons, Utbah and Utayba, and they were both engaged or married to the two daughters of the Prophet ﷺ, Kalthum and Ruqayya and Kulthum. That's what my mom named me after, mashallah. So he made them divorce them, and he made them divorce them in the ugliest way possible. One of them, I think it was Utayba, he came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said to him, he spit on his face. No, he spit on the ground, and he said to him, I divorce your daughter. And he spit on the ground. And you can imagine how hurtful that is, right? The Prophet ﷺ said to him, may Allah show you one of his dogs. May Allah send against you one of his dogs. That's a curse. So the son was getting ready to go on a trip to Sham from Mecca. They were going to Bilad al-Sham, Syria and Palestine, in that area for business. This is the custom of the Arabs, to travel back and forth for their business. So when they're on their way, a lion comes up. And so he says, everybody goes and seeks shelter from the lion. This guy starts to freak out and panic and say, Muhammad, he killed me. This lion is coming at me. He killed me. And then people are saying, what's wrong with you? There's, you could just go in and you'll be okay. And then he's like, no, Muhammad made dua against me, and his dua is always answered. So he was eaten up by that lion, and he died because of it. Another thing Abu Lahab did when the Prophet ﷺ's son died, Abdullah, you know how all the sons of the Prophet ﷺ died for wisdom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had. When his last son died, he would go around the Quraysh and he would say, I have great news to share with you. Abtara Muhammad. Muhammad became without a son. And in that culture and in that society, if you didn't have boys, then that meant your name will be cut off, Abtar. So he would say Muhammad became a bit Abtar because he doesn't have any boys anymore, he doesn't have any sons anymore. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in another surah in the Quran, Inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. The one who is basically harming you, the one who's saying this to you, he is the one who is the abtar. He is the one who his name will be cut off. And look at it, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's name is always mentioned in praise, whereas Abu Lahab, until this day, children are reading these surahs, cursing him and condemning him to hellfire and talking about the fire that he's going to be in. Somehow, when my son learned this in preschool, their teacher, mashallah, tabarakallah, she has a unique way of making the Quran fun for them. So Imran loves this surah. And so one day I said to him, I have pain in my belly. And then I said, why don't you read Quran on me? And then he put his hand on my belly, and then he says to me, Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab. He just loves the surah, and I don't know why, but it just shows you he connected with the idea that this man was so evil, was so hurtful to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And his wife, just like she supported him in dunya she supported him in dunya with the mockery and the hurting of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in the fire, وَامْرَأَتُهُ حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ, his wife, who used to, حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَب means that she's carrying firewood, but it's a literal, literally in this dunya, what she used to do at the time was carry fake news about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to different people. So Allah changed the namima and the fake news and about the Muhammad to hatab, to like firewood. So she's carrying the firewood that her own husband is being burnt in the fire. So she's like, just like you supported him in dunya in evil, you're going to also support him in his punishment. Not only that, you will have a punishment around your neck as well, making sure that you don't leave that place. You're going around like in circles and you're bringing the fire for your husband to be further burnt. And you're obviously going to be burning with him as well. So that's why she deserved that punishment. Seer is really serious, but like if you look at it, the reason why it's so serious and the reason why it's so well deserved is the fact that these people did not, like, they were actively seeking to turn off the light of Allah. They were actively seeking to make sure Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not successful in his message. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يُرِيدُونَ أَن يُطْفِئُوا نُورَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ مُتِمُّ نُورِهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُشْرِكُونَ. They want to turn off the light of Allah, and Allah will definitely, for sure, complete His light, even if those disbelievers even if they do not want it and they do not agree with it or do not want it. So how did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala disgrace their family in this dunya? Because what's interesting in the tafsir is that they both got a horrible punishment in dunya even before the akhirah, right? So for Abu Lahab, when he died, he got sick with an illness they call al-adasa, right? And the Arabs at the time, they looked at that illness like the plague. They believed it was contagious, and so when somebody got afflicted by it, they were completely abandoned. So he was left in a home all by himself. He died because of this illness. And then when he died, his own children let him stay in there for days and days and days. They didn't go and bury him or wash him until he started to smell really bad. So the Quraysh would say, like, do you have no shame? How are you going to let your father rot in this way? And they were like, we don't want to deal with his illness. We don't want this to harm us as well. So they took him, they put him on a place, and then they stoned, they threw rocks at him, rajamuhu, until he all got buried away. So imagine, like, you're not touching you, not washing you, being like so disgusted by the people that you thought like here, ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب, when he used to go around and say, my children will protect me from the punishment of Allah. The simplest things happened to you. You got sick and they couldn't even help you. And your wealth couldn't buy you people to come and help you. You were stoned until you were completely covered up with the rocks so that you're not contagious to the environment as well. As for Jamil, Allah subhanahu, she used to carry, I guess her work, she used to go and find, I wish I looked up the meaning of this. She used to go and get something for the people. She would go and she would carry something on her back and bring it back into the town. And so one day she got tired. She sat on a rock. And she had this thing, she was carrying something heavy and she had it on her neck. And so literally this woman got choked. And she died on her own rope that she was working with. Also fulfilling the fact that fi jidiha hablum min masad, that rope that she's going to be having on the day of judgment and in hellfire, that rope that is going to be around her neck in hellfire is the same way that she died in this dunya, So some of the lessons we learn from this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of the enemies of this religion, even if they have the upper hand. So Abu Lahab, he's the one who had the upper hand. He was the one who was in charge of protecting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yet Allah made sure the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was successful, even though the forces were so against him. And can we think of instances and times, and we are totally living that, where we as Muslims today in the Muslim countries feel like we are the Muslims, or the people who are truly standing up for La ilaha illallah might be being oppressed. Their dictators are taking away their rights. And then you're like, well, we're weaker. We are definitely weaker. We are here fighting Islamophobics. We are thinking Trump is going to, ban all Muslims. They are going to be harming us. They might put us in concentration camps. All these things. Like if I wear my hijab, I'm going to be harmed. I'm a person of color. I'm a black woman. I'm wearing hijab on top of them. I'm visibly Muslim. All these things that we have, and we're thinking like they have the upper hand. But then if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to protect us, He will protect us. Sometimes there's the enemy that within your family, within your own community. And so, for example, when Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, when he wanted to go and conquer Jerusalem, he wanted to go get it back from the Crusades. Before he went on that battle, before he went on that journey or embarked on that, what he made sure is to clean the Muslim Ummah from the heretics that were within the Ummah, that were not on the Quran and the Sunnah, that were like seeking to destroy the Muslim community from inside. He purified them of that. Then when he went, he knew that he had a solid ground behind it. He had a solid foundation. He had that like support from people that would really get his back. So sometimes recognizing that your own community like members or your own family members, that's why the emphasis, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the Prophet started giving the message, he was told, وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, warn your closest family. The first 3 years, the Prophet only emphasized on his own family, on his closest friends, on his closest relatives, right? Then when he was commanded to make it public, he then spread it to the rest of the Arabs, to the rest of the tribes in Quraysh, to the rest of the world, in general. But then the beginning is always, if you really want to have influence, that you start with your own family. But what if they're attacking you? What if they're harming you? The Prophet ﷺ was harmed by that. He was impacted by that. Like in his hat, the Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, وَأَنَّا لَنَعْلَمُ أَنَّهُ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ. We know that what they say, the lies they spread against you, the things that they say against you, we know it's hurting you. فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُنْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. So increase in the praising of your Rabb and be of those who increase their sujood, like pray a whole lot. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of the pain of your heart. Allah will take care of the pain in your like the emotional pain that comes with your own family harming you. Even though so basically acknowledging that it is hurtful, you just continue with what you have to do. And we know that sometimes in our own, when the family is supposed to be your protectors, even if it's not against the mission. Like let's say if your own parents or if your own siblings or if your own distant relatives are the ones who harmed you, it causes much more great pain within a person than when it came from somebody outside of the family members, when it came from somebody from an external person. So how do we deal with that? Similarly, we go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We do our best to stand up for ourselves, to say no. And you see the Prophet he still was gentle with them. He still would honor them. He would still give them the rights that they deserved because they were his family, they were his neighbors. He didn't cut them off. We never see a narration that said he completely cut them off. He continued to do da'wah to them, but he also learned to ignore their harm and seek the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seek comfort from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is a lesson we learn, that kinship is supposed to be kept in Islam. Kinship is supposed to be kept. In kinship, when we think about rahim, is anything that a blood relationship you have with somebody. So your own siblings, your parents, your maternal and paternal uncles and aunties. These are people that you have you share a rahim with. And so you don't cut these people off, you give them their rights. And Islam will encourage whoever would like to see his provision to be increased and his lifespan to be extended, then let him uphold the ties of kinship. What if they are harming me? A man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I think that's not the hadith that I have in here. A man who perfectly maintains the ties of kinship is not the one who recompenses the good done to him by the relatives. Rather, it is the one who is agreeable, like, or he's still good. He still takes care of, like, he still will say salam to them. He will still honor them, even when they are harming him, you know? So that, how do you find the balance between the two? Let's say abuse had been done, whether it was physical, sexual, or what do you call, verbal, and you are truly traumatized by this person. How do you define what is acceptable ways of keeping the ties of kinship? This is when you say it's a case by case, and you really need to speak with someone like a sheikh or a sheikha who's qualified and explain the specific situation and come to an understanding of what would be for you a way that doesn't trigger your trauma, but also you fulfill the ties of the kinship. You know what I mean? I don't know. I know, like, of a family member that is always, like, whatever there is a mention of this person, there is, like, always a problem coming up. Like, this person is not mindful of what they say, is not mindful of how they speak to others, and they're somebody who really deserves to be honored and respected, you know? And so you see that so many people just mention the name of this family relative, and they just shut down, like, I don't want to deal with that person, you know? And it's not one person, it's like multiple people. So then you realize that this person that is constantly harming people, they need help themselves. Like, they have their own battle that they need to fight. So understanding that, you know what you're doing to me is, it's not me. You're not trying to just purposefully hurt me. You have your own issues you need to deal with. I am separate from what the harm that you bring me. And this comes with maturity. This comes with understanding. If you're a child, you obviously will not be able to do this, and you carry a lot of pain with you. But if you're an adult, you can make that distinction. So we have this extra care that we have to show children, and protection from them being harmed in that way. So it's case by case. There is always that balance that a Muslim has between doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked you to do. Like, and Allah says, فَأْتُوا مِنْهُ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Whatever you're commanded to do of it as much you are able to. As much as you are able to. How do you define that? It's a case by case, right? There isn't one general, like, rule that says, if this happened, you do this. If this happened, you do that. It's a case by case, and obviously taking care of yourself, fulfilling the rights, they taking care of yourself and your own well-being comes before anything else, right? So we're done with the surah. I'm wondering if you have any questions. You found it. Okay, good. Okay, but it's true that some people attribute everything to magic. Yes, if someone is not getting pregnant, married, sick, they will blame it on magic, on something that is just coincidence. That is so true. Thank you, Samar, for pointing that out. Or I remember a long time ago, a friend had a miscarriage, and she really attributed it to Ain, you know? And where do you draw the balance? Like, knowing that it is true, and knowing it could happen, and it does happen, versus it could have been a natural occurrence, you know? How do you know the difference? Not to be so consumed with these things that you attribute everything to it. Like, where is your belief in Allah? You know, where is your belief in Allah? Dominique said, if we think of a prior employer has put magic on us, we should make dua for protection. Is there anything else we can do? So my brother specializes in ruqya, and this is something I wanted to ask him, because in the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was afflicted by magic, when he had the dream, he saw, like, the angels told him who the person who did the magic was. The Prophet ﷺ, like, the angels told him. My brother sent me this ruqya thing, and he one time said to me that if a person had been afflicted by ayn, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can tell, like, they get this feeling, or they know that this is the person who did it to them. What I worry about, and this is something I want to go back to scholars about it and ask, is where do you draw the line in doing that when it comes to, like, also not accusing someone of something that they might not have done to you, but based on the fact that there is animosity between you two, there is hatred, there's bad relationship, that you believe they're the ones who did it to you. You know, I could hate you, and we could have fights, and then the next day something happens to you, and then you automatically attribute it to that person. What if it wasn't that person, it was somebody else? You know, so I worry about, what if we are accusing innocent people? You know, so that's something that we need to know, like, how do you draw the line? How do you draw the line? In some situations, you know, like, you really do know this is the person who did it to you. You see it in a dream. You see their actions towards you. Allah Ta'ala alam, like, this is something that I would leave to people who are much more knowledgeable in this area. I have a family member who has been diagnosed with severe bipolar. She has been ill for 5 years. No medication has worked for her. She's reached a point where her illness became so severe, she kept getting hospitalized in mental institutions for severe bipolar episodes for months at a time. Her relatives decided this is beyond just a mental illness, although some sheikhs who have read on her classed it as a mental illness. The family decided to perform ruqya on her themselves daily for hours on end, 7 to 8 months. Jinns began to speak in her tongue and took complete control over her mind and body. For a period of 7 months, the sister became cured through the Quran and dua. She has been fully cured since spring of 2013 and is now fully functioning. Is this universe in university and working? MashaAllah, tabarakallah. So this is what I, and she, what I want to know is, like, completely cured also from the bipolar, like, it's completely gone. Alhamdulillah for that. Alhamdulillah for that. Alhamdulillah for that. Also, not like taking a situation like that and applying it to everybody, that would be serious danger. That would be serious danger, because I also have a family member who has bipolar disorder. He is on medication. Whenever he gets off his medication, the episodes come back and they're pretty serious. And so what happens is, when we say get off the medication and don't do any treatments, and we're only gonna do if the person's yaqeen is at that level, alhamdulillah, go for it, it could work. But then we can't pass that as a general thing to do, because even our ulama recognize there is a room for mental illness, just like there is room for physical illness, right? There is room in our human biology and psychology for us to have illnesses, physical and emotional and mental, you know? So if that person is struggling with something, and when sihr happens or when ayn happens, it could also be, it turns also into a physical, emotional, or psychological pain that has been comes to you. How do you draw the line? How do you draw the line? You have to always go back to people who are reliable, who can help you distinguish between the two. And I say people who are reliable, who specialize in this, who have like ilm of knowledge of the deen, and ilm and knowledge of like physical and biological and emotional and psychological illnesses, where they can bring the two together, you know? Palestine said in Surat AlMasad, we learn that what goes around comes around. Whatever harm to others do wrongfully, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, especially in one harm the awliya of Allah and those who are involved in the work of Allah. Yes, absolutely. And you know, that's something I wanted to emphasize, Palestine, is that is that, you know, when you have an important mission in life, it's not going to come easy. You are going to be harmed. You are going to be mocked. You're going to be, lies are going to be made up against you, and it's going to hurt. And, you know, that work is not easy. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has got your back if you're working for His sake. If what you're doing is for Him, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has got your back. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah for her. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give it to my family member that I'm speaking about as well. Because cure is definitely from Allah. Definitely from Allah. I only mention this to educate that even if some say it is a bipolar and not spiritual related, to still continue with the ruqyah. Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, something my friend brought up the other day was that I think it was an Ayatul Kursi that somebody said, you know, like, what if you read Ayatul Kursi and it's not working for you? And my friend was telling me, like, your level of yaqeen in Allah, your level of yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like, you know, you continue to use the words of Allah in treating yourself, and wallahi, you will always see improvement in whatever it is that you're experiencing. And I speak from like experience with friends and people that I know who tell me that they have either been like sihr has been done against them or ayn has been done against them, and they know it, like the scholars have shown it to them, or that they have been possessed, but then they committed to the ruqyah so much so that their iman in Allah increased, and then the symptoms or whatever they were experiencing decreased, you know. So there is definitely a relationship. And I've also seen like sad situations where my brother tells me this, where a lot of the people that come to him for ruqyah, he ends up not helping them or not being able to help them, because it's like going to a doctor and saying, hey doctor, I'm sick. And then when the doctor tells you the cure is Quran, the cure is Sunnah, the cure is protection by dhikr, but they don't take it. You can't outsource your faith. Faith is not outsourced. You know what I mean? You can't just go to a raqi and say, you treat me, you know? You have to do the work. And when you do the work, that's wallahi when we see the magic. When your family takes it upon themselves to no longer outsource it because they love you so much, they want you to be well, that's when the cure comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. I'm going to do Surat al-Nasr. Where am I at? Ya Rab, help me finish it in 20 minutes. I love this surah. I love this surah, but it also isn't too long. Okay. All right, so Surat al-Nasr. Surat al-Nasr, another beautiful surah. إن إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. This surah is definitely a Madani surah, and there's two incidents in the Tafseer that say two purposes of revelation, of when was it revealed and why was it revealed. One is after the Battle of Hunayn, the 8th year of the Hijrah, immediately after the conquest of Mecca, when the Prophet ﷺ was able to go and conquer Mecca, and the Muslims went to Mecca and they're now ruling Mecca. Allahu Akbar. It was a time of great victory for the Ummah. It was like Fath, you know, like that was Fath Mecca, like they opened Mecca, and that meant the Muslims now, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his deen became successful over all the harms that we had mentioned in Surat Tabbat, all the pain that used to be attributed to that time period. It's gone, and now what came is opening, victory. You've reached the end of it. So in Surat Masad, we're talking about it being revealed like maybe the 3rd year of the Islamic, like of the da'wah. And then this surah, we're talking about the end, almost like 2 years or 2 years before the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other opinion says that it came in Hujjatul Wada' 60 to 80 days before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam died. Okay, so there are 2 surahs that are like here and here, and then the da'wah is in between, like all the stuff could happen in between. So it's a surah that when we read it, we come with the emotions of Alhamdulillah. like Alhamdulillah, finally. But it also comes with another emotion, which is the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has fulfilled the mission. He has fulfilled the purpose why Allah brought him up, brought him here. And so when your purpose is done, then that means your time is also done, and you go meet with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The revelation is also near complete. How did the Prophet, and something else that we learned from this surah is, how did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam become after the surah was revealed? And this is something like for all of us to think of and ponder of as well. إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ, when there comes Allah's victory and conquest. وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا, and you will see that the people are entering into the religion in multitudes, in huge numbers, like huge crowds of people are accepting the message of Islam. Then what should you do? فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْهِ, then celebrate or praise the name of your Lord, and basically like bihamdihi, bihamdi rabbika, like in praise and in gratitude to your Rabb, and seek his forgiveness. wastaghfirhu innahu kana tawwaba, indeed he is the acceptor of the repentance, and he is the one who's going to let go of those minor shortcomings that you had in the process. Okay, so the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's what was the victory of Allah? Considering the two times that there was two times that the Muslims had victory, one did not seem like an open victory, but it was, and that was the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with a group of the companions, without weapons, they left Medina and they went to Mecca for the intention of performing Hajj. And when they went there, before they went in, they stayed in a place before it, and they sent Uthman radiallahu anhu to go in, because he was still honored and loved by the people there. He was respected. He came from like a respected family, and they still had that relationship, that good relationship. They sent him in so he could say, we are coming in to perform our Hajj. Let us. We're just letting you know. And then the Kuffar of Quraysh said, nope, we're not going to accept you. So they came, and there was rumors that spread that Uthman radiallahu anhu was killed, and everybody went under this tree, and they call it like Bay'atul Ridwan. One of like the Prophet ﷺ tells us that the people who did that, and Allah praises them in the Quran, and he promises them all Jannah. All the people that were under that tree who pledged allegiance to the Prophet, that they will fight for the sake of the harm that has been inflicted on the messenger that they sent, Uthman radiallahu anhu. They will fight for that reason, even though they came without weapons in a peaceful way, seeking to just perform their worship. But anyways, they found out that this was not true. Uthman did come back, and another messenger came, Sahal ibn Amr, I think, or Suhail ibn Amr. One of the leaders of the Quraysh came, and they reached an agreement. And that agreement said that for 10 years, the Muslims will not come to Mecca. For 10 years, the Muslims, anybody that comes from Quraysh or from Mecca and goes and accepts Islam and goes to Medina, they would have to return them. And so the Prophet ﷺ accepted that treaty, and the Muslims were not very happy. And this is when we see that Umar radiallahu anhu was so angry, was so confused. He'd go to Abu Bakr and he would say, Abu Bakr, are we not on the haqq? Are we not are we not upon Islam? Do we not have the support of Allah? Why are we going to settle for this? Why are we going to accept this treaty? Why are we going to accept this agreement that puts us in a lower place? And then he goes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says the same thing. And the Prophet ﷺ tells him, like, you know what, are you like in doubt about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what he's going to do? So he calms down and he accepts it, but he still sees it as like, this is not a victory. But the Prophet ﷺ knew, and Allah told him in Surat al-Fath, and I put it in your notes, like, to go back and read the surah, because it's such a beautiful, powerful surah that when the Muslims thought this was weakness, that this was the greatest victory they had, because it meant even though you were at a place of weakness right now, you see yourself at a place where you're not getting what you want, but this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has actually given you everything you have been asking for. And it's so difficult, but wallahi, like I say this with the emotion of recognizing that there was a time in my life where something happened to me that I thought like, this is the worst this thing had been. And it was like the day I was going through this difficulty, I was reading and reviewing Surat al-Fath in my memorization. And when I was doing it in the morning, I remember like not really connecting to the surah, but then the next time I read it that evening, it connected because of all the things that happened. And I was thinking like, Ya Allah, I'm in so much pain right now, but I'm reading the surah and I'm going to take it as you are telling me what I'm asking you for is going to come my way, you know? And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the surah. And it's been years now, and wallahi, I could say that that pain that I was in that day was the worst it had been about this specific situation. And what happened afterwards was only a sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was like, you know, when you hit rock bottom about something, and then Allah tells you from here on, it's only going to get better. Because you hitting that place of rock bottom, you recognized some things. You became aware of some things that you needed to be aware of. It was powerful for me. But this, going back to the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, it was a victory for the Muslims. Okay, what happened a year, like not even 8 months after, or not even a year after, the promise was broken from the Quraysh side. So when the treaty was broken from their side, that meant the Muslims can now go and enter into Mecca. Okay, and they did just that. The Muslims went, the Prophet ﷺ went on his camel, and the Quraysh thought he would kill all of them. They thought, we've harmed him for 13 years. We tried to kill him. We went to war with him. He's going to destroy all of us now. And what did he do? He said, you're all my brothers. You're all like forgiven. Go and seek about your life. But what did he do? He made sure that the Kaaba was the house of Allah. So he removed 360 gods or idols that were there, destroyed all of them. And you know what's beautiful is that we're going to watch a video. The man who was being tortured, the black slave who was being tortured, is now the one who goes on top of the Kaaba for the first time and makes the call to prayer, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You know, and it's like everybody is watching, and the Quraysh, like Abu Sufyan and some of them, they're looking at one another and they have this conversation, and they say to one another, the slaves are now ahead of us, you know, because there was Bilal, the black slave that was up there, that they did not look. They looked at him as like nothing, obviously. And then there was also Suhaib al-Rumi, who was a Roman, but he was also a slave. So he was also looked at as nothing. The Prophet ﷺ gave him a status. He was with the Prophet ﷺ. He was right there forefront. And Salman al-Farisi was also, like, there's all these poor people and slaves that used to be tortured, but now they are with Muhammad and they have the honor of being there with him. So Abu Sufyan says, like, they are going to be respected before us, like the leaders of Quraysh. And so Sahl ibn Amr said, you know, like, we delayed our response to this message, and because we delayed it, now we're going to be delayed as well. And so eventually he accepted Islam, and he became, they all accepted Islam, but he also became like known for his like thabat on Islam. Like, he was very steadfast on his path in this da'wah, and was fighting for the sake of Allah eventually. So multitudes of people accepting Islam. When the Prophet ﷺ ran away from Mecca and his people, they were all escaping in secret. They were scared they would be killed. Muhammad ﷺ was being chased, and here he was coming on a camel, completely honored, completely like respected. And you know what? So beautiful. The Prophet ﷺ comes in, and he has his head down. Like, he doesn't have his head up to say, look at me, I did it. He's still like saying like, it was by the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I was able to do this, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed me to do this. And he has his head down, bowing, even though he's in a high, in a like high, elevated place on top of a camel, just to acknowledge the fact that nothing that we ever succeed in is our own doing, that it's always connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is the year, actually the year before opening of Mecca is when the Prophet ﷺ used to have multitudes of people accepting Islam. And the reason why the Arabs, they did not accept Islam before is because they used to say, he is from the Quraysh, let's see who has the upper hand. And when he becomes successful, or when he succeeds over his own people, that's when we will know he's on the truth and we will accept it from him. So then you had thousands and thousands and thousands of people coming, to the point where over 100,000 people came to do the Hajj with the Prophet ﷺ, and that's the people that he is giving the last sermon to, like when he is about to die and his time is up, and you know, like everything is coming to an end. It's like Allah shows him how Allah shows him that it all, like, here it is, you know, like here it is, everything you visualized, I told you about, to stick to it, to pray, the pain, the sadness, the struggle was real, but then it's like, here's the gift. And you know what's so interesting is that he dies right after, like he doesn't live a long time to see where the ummah actually went, you know. And so there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, subhanallah, there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says that people enter into this faith in multitudes and they leave it in multitudes. So studying Islamic history becomes really important to see what were the factors that led to this great success, to this great victory, and what were the factors that led to great loss. You know, like how did our ummah change? Like knowing that we went from nothing, from being like the Prophet ﷺ being chased out of Mecca, to being one of the most powerful civilizations that humanity has ever seen, to the point where we are at today, so weak, and our countries are underdeveloped, and like we're puppets, and you know what I mean, like we're killing one another and we're busy with one another. And so this is when the Prophet ﷺ tells us that you have the Quran and you have the Sunnah, and if you leave it, then you're destroyed, you're nothing, you know. And so so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, when you reach this level of success, what should you do? Worship Allah even more. When you reach this level of success, you worship Allah even more, because you're coming back to Him. You know, this is the reason why all of this has been happening. So what I had in here for you is to read, like, so to just draw further lessons from this. It's like, go back to Surat al-Fath. It's surah number 27. Read the entire surah, because Allah shows us, and like my favorite parts is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, like, Allah brings down sakina, tranquility on the believers, because at the time of turmoil and punishment and struggle, fear is the only thing that we're going to experience, and shaitan increases the fear, and the people will, like, and this is what Allah says in the Quran in Surat Al-Imran. He says, when the people gathered and they told the Muslims, the armies have gathered up and they want to kill you, they want to destroy you, so have fear. And then they said, you know, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel, Allah is our protector, Allah is sufficient for us, and He is the perfect one to take care of us. And then shaitan, what does he do? He always tells us to fear. And Allah tells us, no, don't fear, I got you, and I'm gonna give you tranquility. So in Surah Muhammad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِن تَنْصُرُوا اللَّهَ يَنْصُرْكُمْ وَيُثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَكُمْ. If you support Allah, then Allah will support you and He will make you stand steadfast. A person who's in a state of connection to Allah is steadfast. They're not shaky. The ground under them is not shaky. Whereas a person who is distant from the remembrance of Allah, distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, shaitan can easily put fear in them. And he does put fear in them. And because of it, they're not stable, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in that yaqeen. Another thing, other lessons that we derive from this surah, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did not reach the success by himself. He had the companions, he had these companions that loved him, that were willing to give up their lives for him, that were, whatever he said, whatever he brought from Allah, they said, sami'na wa ata'na, we hear and we obey. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored him. That's why the Prophet ﷺ tells us, never say anything negative about my companions. Even though they're human beings, we love them, we respect all of them and acknowledge their humanity, but we love them and respect them, because he says, if one of you was to spend mountains of wealth in the path of this religion, you will never do anything that my companions were able to do for me. So acknowledging that they also were people who, when they saw the opportunity to seek Allah's blessings, they sought it, they went for it. And it's like a train that you get on, and if you get on it at the right time, you reach a place that you will be happy with later. And if you think about it, is Allah using us now? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using me and you for reminding people of him, for bringing people to his path? Because it's not going to come easy. It's going to require sacrifice from within us. It's going to require sacrifice of our own money and wealth and energy and time. Are we giving it? Are we of the people that are just like the companions, hastening to that goodness? Because either way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give Islam success. Are we going to take the opportunity of being the people that are rewarded in that path? Because either way, it will be done. Either way, victory of Allah comes. Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this surah was revealed, what he started, this is the dua that he used to make all the time. This is the dua that he used to say all the time, and I put it in the notes for you. Subhanaka Allahumma Rabbana wa bihamdika Allahumma ighfir li. She said she used to hear him say it in his dua. Last week we talked about Ibn Abbas and how Ibn Abbas, some of the companions later, the older ones, they would say to Umar, why is this young man sitting amongst us? And so this is the surah that he tested him with. He said to him, he said to everybody, what do you say about inna إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ? And everybody said the meaning of the surah, which is correct. But Ibn Abbas said, this is telling us that the Prophet ﷺ is going to die. This is telling us that the message of the Prophet ﷺ is done and that he is going to die. And so this is why Aisha radiallahu anha says, when he was given this surah, automatically what he started to do is read this in his ruku', and we could do the same thing, and we could do it now, as to seek the success of Allah in everything we do in our lives, for his sake, Ya Rabbil Alameen. So the video I wanted to show is 5 minutes long, but I am going to acknowledge the fact that we are done. It's 11:01. So if anybody has to go, you could go. I want to also answer questions. But after this point, I guess I'm really sorry, it's above 5 minutes. I'm going to show the video, answer the questions, just connect with one another. But the actual core, material for the class is done. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. All right, I don't see any questions. So I'll play this video. How do I do it? Oh my goodness. So it doesn't come up in it doesn't let you click on it on your PDF, does it? Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like we could talk about it forever. But, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us its true understanding. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to see that the times of turmoil in our own lives and how if we are connected to Allah and we live our lives for the sake of Allah and we're always making dua, that to see that the two are very connected. That victory for the ummah is the same thing as victory in your own life and in your own personal life, and that for the ummah, it will not come unless we are all like individually guided to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we're individually living lives of complete submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that when we do it, we inspire our own families and we raise our children with it and we create ripple effects, And I think that when we're living that times, even though it doesn't seem like it, that we are truly living that times, that the ummah is a lot more woke than it was maybe 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And I can say this for the Somali community. I know this can be said for the Indo-Pakistani community. I know this could be said for the immigrant community, like the couple, first, second, third generation Muslims. As bad as situations are in Somalia, I know our people started studying the deen and becoming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though it's not perfected, like perfection is only to Allah, but the steps have been taken to Allah after the civil war. And the Muslims, the Somalis that are here in America today or in the West, yes, there might be a lot of like things that make us sad because obviously we're a refugee community, but then there's also a lot to appreciate in the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought us to a place where we're much better in our deen, that we're closer a little bit, even if it seems like sometimes that we might see it as an external thing, not an internal thing, but there's stages. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring us great victory and use all of us to be people who guide to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, I'm going to turn on this video because I love it and we can never end this class, this specific surah without it. And a lot of you guys are still on, so alhamdulillah. All right. What's the problem, Habibi? Okay, let's skip verification.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
So it was. Muhammad took no revenge and allowed none. He declared Mecca a holy place. No one may shed blood or cut down a tree or kill a living thing in Mecca. Soon all Arabia was converted, not only to the new worship, but to the new laws, manners, attitudes contained in Islam. The Prophet had lived to see his work done, but now he began to feel the nearness of death. One great act of his prophethood remained, the setting of its seal. He called the people to him, and he spoke for the last time his message of surrender to God and humanity to man. O mankind, listen well. I may not be with you much longer. The weak among you, feed them on what you eat, dress them as you are dressed. You will meet your God, and he will call you to account for your actions. Let those who are present warn those who are absent. You are all descended from Adam, and the best among you is he who most regards God. Think deeply about what I say. Let all your feuds be abolished. You must know that every Muslim is the brother of every other Muslim, and all Muslims are brothers one of another. Between Muslims there are no races and no tribes. Nor must you take anything from your brother except what is given freely. Do not oppress, and do not be oppressed. O my people, I am but a man. It may be that the angel of death will visit me soon, and death will overtake me. But I have left you a book revealed by God, the Quran, which is light and guidance. Now he repeated to the people the final revelation of the Quran, the seal and termination. Not Muhammad's words, but God's word. This day I have perfected your religion for you, and completed my favor to you, and have chosen for you Islam as your religion. On June the 8th, 632, in his 63rd year, Muhammad died. Many of his followers could not believe the fact. How can such a man die? But Abu Bakr, the Prophet's friend, stood up in the mosque. If anyone worships Muhammad, let him know that Muhammad is dead. But he who worships God, let him know that God is alive and cannot die. They buried Muhammad beside his mosque in Medina. But the religion he preached found its place in the heart of man. It endured. It multiplied. Still to Mecca they come, mankind. The people of Islam dressed in their pilgrim white. All equal before God, all united in this place of prayer. Each individual soul joined in a community of worship. One God.
Assalamu alaikum, ladies.